Hello and welcome to Juliet and Lucy's Quiet Leadership Revolution, the podcast for senior and aspiring leaders who want to make their voice heard and their impact felt through thoughtful, reflective, confident leadership. I'm Juliet Corbett. I'm an executive coach and strategist, and I work one-to-one with senior leaders, guiding them to find their strategic focus, empower their teams, and regain control over their time.
And I'm Lucy Gower. I'm a facilitator, trainer and coach, and I empower leaders to build their happy, confident and high-performing teams. Today we're going to talk about a topic that's very close to my heart, and it's about facilitation skills and what that means and how that plays out in terms of leadership.
Yeah. So Lucy, I am honoured that we have an expert in the house in you. I always love the conversations that we've had about facilitation, and I'm really pleased that we're going to be sharing the inside track, the behind the curtains side of what you do with the world. First of all, can you give us a sense of what do you think of when you say facilitation? What do you mean by that phrase?
What I mean, which might be different to what other people might think it means, facilitation is all about the process of making something possible or easier. And for me, it's about bringing people together to see different perspectives. It's perhaps about solving problems. It might be about motivating each other. It might be about getting inspired, but it's about gathering people and different perspectives together to come up with new ideas, solutions, and to make the process of that easier. Not necessarily always simple, but as a facilitator, your job is to guide people through that process. And you're always going to get better results if people are enjoying the process.
Oh, I love that you said that. Yes, definitely, definitely. So, can you give us a few examples? Because this is both kind of a job title of, you are a facilitator, meaning normally you're an external person that comes in, and it's a skill set that we want leaders to really kind of thrive in so that they are facilitating their team. Can you give us a couple of examples so we've got those in mind as we talk through what really great facilitation might look like?
So you might have an external facilitator to come in if you want to get your team together. And there can be lots of different reasons why you might want to do that. So a lot of the teams that I work with are hybrid working, and it's really important in terms of high performance, building trust, building relationships, to get people in a room together every so often. And when you do it, because it can be costly to get everybody in a room together, and people can view it like we're taking time out in order to do this, you want to make it count. So that session being designed for whatever the end result is that you want to get from it is really, really important. And it's a mix of science and art to be able to do that. So it might be that you want to get your team working together better and to build a bit of trust. It might be that you've got a specific problem that it's going to be really helpful to get lots of different voices in the room to be able to solve that. But a facilitator, an external facilitator's job is to ensure that all voices are heard, that you're creating a safe space, that anything can be said. It's to keep people and the timing on track so you get to where you said that you were going to go to bring some energy along so it's an enjoyable process. A lot of time people might feel a bit anxious about being in a room together. So all the things that you do as a facilitator to kind of hold that space for people and make it safe, make it enjoyable, and get the results that your client wants is key. And the other thing, as an external person, you can ask all of those questions that don't get asked by the people who know too much about the topic. So the stupid questions, they get called, or the assumptions that everybody is making, you kind of have permission to ask all of those things, which can often really help shift the thinking in the room. As a leader, you might want to facilitate your own session, which is absolutely fine. You're not in quite the same position where you can ask those questions because you're part of the group. And if you have an external facilitator, as the leader, you become part of the group that's being facilitated. That can be really helpful in terms of a team dynamic. But absolutely, your job as a leader is to bring people together, create a safe space, ensure that all voices are heard, that people feel safe to say whatever they want to say, and have an enjoyable time
Mm.
working on a problem, a solution, or whatever it is that you want to get out of the day.
Mm. Because what's really interesting is the way that you've described it there is, yes, there will be set pieces where there's, a half day or a full day event, meeting, a kind of
Yeah.
an occasion. But actually, this is also something that leaders are doing in little
Yes.
conversations in every meeting that they hold, any meeting that they're chairing or leading or involved with is being facilitated in some
Yeah,
way, whether it's
absolutely.
happening or not, whether it's obvious or not. And so actually to be able to see how that facilitation is happening in everyday work
Mhm.
as a leader is quite a superpower actually to see all of these things that are happening that are actually through a new lens of facilitation.
I completely agree. I think it's a really underrated, underestimated superpower. If you're facilitating your team, you are really modeling that you as the leader don't have all the answers. And it's about facilitating conversations in order that other people have their voice heard and perhaps have the answers. And, we know that none of us like stuff being done to us or being told what we should do. Or maybe that's my assumption. I don't like being told what I
No, I
should or
think that's a
shouldn't
very
do.
safe assumption, yes.
But involving people in discussions about strategy, about problem solving, about what their working days, weeks, months look like, about the projects that they're working on, is a shortcut for getting buy-in, motivation, and new thinking and ideas from people that have a different vision of the world than you do. Just because you're a leader of a
Mm,
team doesn't mean to say that the way that you think about things is the single only right way to do
yeah.
something.
I think that's what makes this episode important. Actually, is it's wrapping together some of the themes from all the way through the episodes that we've done. That this
Yeah,
idea that as a leader, you don't have to have all the answers.
yeah, absolutely.
You want to create the conditions in which you can find the answers together. And that involves all the things you've just said around asking great questions, creating psychological safety, all of this idea of as the leader, it's your role to facilitate the team getting stuff done and
Exactly.
making good decisions. And this is the skill set that replaces the autocratic, controlling
Yeah,
leader of I have the only one right answer.
exactly. And by leading in this way, you're role modeling, like you're helping
Yeah,
people to be curious, to ask more questions. You're helping people to solve their own problems and other people's. You're
mm,
giving permission to speak up, to suggest different ways of working. And recently we've been talking about solving complex problems and how, different perspectives. What I would have talked about in the creativity session, which was about cognitive diversity, um, all of those things. If you're almost like, I don't play chess, but I feel like you're moving chess pieces around. Like
yeah,
you're
yeah,
the conductor, but it's
yeah,
the orchestra that is making the music. I don't know if that
yeah.
analogy works or not, but it's
No,
definitely
it does. It does.
different from being like, I'm the leader, I need to have all the solutions, to here I am gathering my people, and together we are going to make progress in the
Yeah,
direction that we've agreed that we're going to go in.
yeah. So we'll put links to some of those other episodes in there around creativity, problem solving, not having all the answers. We'll put all those in the notes for this episode.
Mm,
Um, so let's unpack a little bit. You've mentioned some of the things that really great facilitators do. It probably comes quite naturally to you. So I don't know how easy
bless
it is for
you.
you to unpack what it is that you do. But we've heard the phrase kind of holding space. What do we
Yeah.
actually mean? What do you mean by that? How do you do that in a room?
So I think I fell into facilitation, I think. So when I worked at a big charity and I became like their innovation manager, a lot of the work that I was doing was bringing people together to have ideas and solve problems. And so perhaps it is something that sits naturally
Mm,
with me. But that said, if I think about some of my early sessions that I facilitated, I had a I had an agenda, I had exercises that I'd looked up on the internet, and I got really stressed if somebody said something that took us off piece. And I think that one of the things that you definitely learn by doing is that holding that space is about designing a program, designing an agenda, but it's also about being able to be in the room and seeing what people need and throwing it all away and doing something different based on what the room
Mm,
needs. And I think that I can't articulate what how I do that, but I definitely know that I might have arrived and have been like, the people here are not in the mindset that I've been told that they're in. Therefore, the things that I have designed rely on a particular mindset of we're working, we're not there yet. I need to do something to get them to that point. I don't know
mhm,
how I identify that. I know
mm,
that sometimes in the afternoon the energy is really low and I have to think about doing something different in order to get the energy back up again. It's an intuitive thing. And I know when I work with other
yeah,
facilitators, um, that will go, this isn't right for the agenda, is it? And we've never been able to articulate why that isn't right
yeah,
at that particular point in time. It's because people are complex, and it's
yes,
facilitation is a complex problem that you're solving, bringing people together to get to an some sort of end result or conclusion. But I think the ability to trust your intuition to respond to what the room needs is a massive part of facilitation. And as a
yeah,
leader, I mean, most of the leaders that I work with have that intuition about what their team needs or doesn't need. And it's having the courage to then step away from your agenda
mm,
to deliver what in your gut you know is the
yeah,
thing that's going to get the better result.
yeah.
That sounds a bit
So I
woo
think
woo,
there's
doesn't it?
various different. No, it doesn't. There's various different phrases that we might be able to place on that. So one of them is reading the room, quite
Mm,
an old-fashioned way of saying that you can sense in the room the energy levels,
yeah,
who's with you, who's fighting against the flow of where
yeah,
you're going. So there's that kind of sense of I'm reading the room, but it's actually much more interactive than that phrase. So the more modern way of thinking about it might be this is to do with emotional intelligence. I can use my emotional intelligence to read the room and to acknowledge that my emotion impacts the room. And
yeah,
so the energy and the response that I have in being agile and adjusting my exercise, adjusting the agenda, enables you to have an interactive relationship with the room. So it's not just
yeah.
reading it, it's also being the conductor,
And
as you
it's
said before.
and it's being brave enough to
Yeah,
ask the question and say, I'm sensing this, or we've got two options. We can either focus here on this, or we
yeah,
can focus on something else. Where's going to be the best use of our time? And I think
yeah.
fairly early on in my facilitation career, I turned up to a sort of strategy away day. And what I'd planned, it was really obvious from going around the room and going, what do you want to get from the day? Um, like for whatever reason, it wasn't
Mm,
congruent with what I'd been told the day was for. So I said, okay, give me 5 minutes. I'm going to just change what I said I was going to do. And I came back and I said, this is what I'm going to propose based on what you've told me. What do you think? And that everybody agreed. And my feedback at the end was, I'm really pleased that we did what we did and not what we were originally going to do. And I think
yeah,
that really helped with my confidence to be able to trust my my hunch or my intuition or what was needed
yeah,
in the room. And some of that was gut
yeah,
feeling, but some of that was told me. I had a choice that I was going to go, well, thanks for telling me it's a nice warm up, but we're going to do something different, or
yeah.
to really be true to what the room needed.
And so that there's is it was the same with anything, same with presentation skills, same with facilitation, it's same with lots and lots of different leadership skills, that the baseline level is to really think about what are your outcomes, what's your agenda,
Yeah.
what exercises might get you there. That is the basic building blocks of learning to facilitate.
Yes,
And you would still do
absolutely,
that, but
100%.
then mastering that skill requires you to also be able to be fluid in the moment, to co-create with the people around you,
Yeah,
to take a break and say, actually, we're going to take a 10-minute break. everyone go for a walk. And sometimes one thing I've done is, everyone goes for a walk to answer a question. The question's
Yes.
relevant, it's useful. But basically, what I've done is to create 10 minutes for me to have a bit of a
Yeah.
rethink, maybe with another person who I can bounce ideas off of.
Exactly.
What we were planning next just isn't going to work. I sent them off to
Yeah.
do that question because I just needed 10 minutes to
Yeah.
figure this out.
Yeah.
And if you've done it well, the question they're answering, the information they feed back is going to inform your next step. But,
Yeah.
that's maybe intense mastery of the skill.
Yeah.
But there's this basic building blocks of how to facilitate. And then there's an enormous amount of fluidity.
Yeah.
And that comes with the courage, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
Mm,
And I think the other thing that comes back to is about, facilitation, whether you're doing it as an independent person or as a leader, it is a two-way exercise, and it is about listening and reading between the lines of what people need and want. And if you've created a safe space, then they're able to articulate that and tell you,
mm,
and being able to listen and respond to what people need, whether that's in a big room or whether that's in a one-to-one meeting as a leader, is a skill that we all need to practice. We're great at talking. Most people don't spend as much energy really learning to listen
yeah.
and then
Yeah.
do something with that. And I think that's something that's ongoing, that we're always learning, aren't we? I
Yeah.
believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. So that connects to some of the other things that you mentioned earlier on, that what makes great facilitation is that you're creating a safe space, and listening is
yeah,
definitely part of that. And there was something as well about hearing all voices, and allowing, depending on whether it's externally facilitated to the leader as one of those voices in the room, or whether the leader is facilitating
yeah,
themselves. But do you have any techniques that allow you to create an environment where all voices are safe to be heard?
yeah. There's lots of different techniques. I think there's something important about how we're all different in terms of how we learn. We're all different in terms of how comfortable we might feel in a room of people, and about how confident we might feel to um, speak up. There is there's something called liberating structures. I suppose it's a methodology, which there's a free app. We can share the link.
Yeah,
But
it's
one of
great. You should
the
definitely,
is
yeah,
yeah, it's
yeah,
there's
really good.
lots of different facilitation techniques, but one that I come back to often is, even within a big group, asking people to do a little bit of work and thinking on their own, writing the thing down, um, then to work in pairs, because then you're just talking to one other person, and then to pair those people up into fours, and then to feed back to the whole group. And sometimes
Mm,
I'm a big fan of post-it notes. You write it down, you can put it on the wall. That means that all voices are on the wall. It doesn't rely on someone putting their hand up in order to be able to say something. And if you've been in pairs or fours, sometimes someone will speak on your behalf. But then there's a facilitator role in spotting some of those dynamics and being kind of aware on who always puts their hand up first, and if there's anyone that's been quiet, to give them the opportunity to speak. But that's slightly different than then picking on somebody if they are
yeah.
feeling really anxious about speaking in that group. And it's,
Mm,
as people are working, you can wander around and take a look at what's happening. I mean, I'm talking here about being in a room. It's easier in a room than it is online. I find it easier anyway. You can
yeah.
you can spot nuances. But I suppose there's something in that when I'm thinking about leadership, about role modeling some of that. So, if I ask people to do something in a group, I will give an example of how I've done it, or I'll play it out first. Sometimes I ask people to role play because we learn by doing. Sometimes people find that terrifying. Um,
That would be
they
me.
can,
I hate role play. Yeah, sorry, carry on.
but lots of people do. I often call it playing out rather than role playing. But it might be like, again, like just work in pairs, and people can do as much or as little as they want. But role
Yeah,
playing that first, playing that out first, I wouldn't ever ask anyone to do anything in a workshop that I'm not prepared to do and haven't done myself. And I think that same applies to um, leadership, role playing the behaviour that you
yeah,
want to see, and being prepared to do the thing that might feel a bit out of your comfort zone in order to help create the safe space for other people to do the same.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting there that definitely these different facilitation models, and actually that 1, 2, 4
Mm,
all is what I call it. I've no idea if that's the official term, but that
yes, it
idea you
is.
think on your own, pairs, the pairs come into fours, and then you collect the ideas in whatever way. I use that quite frequently.
Yeah,
And I find that sidesteps the oh, you've been quiet, what do you have to say question, which clearly as a facilitator is the worst thing that you can possibly say in front of a whole room of people. But it unearths the viewpoints of the people that actually are only really probably going to be speaking one-to-one or in small groups. And
yeah,
as you say, often then they have really good ideas, and those ideas then get voiced into the room in whatever way
yeah,
happens, whether that's someone else, but no one's taking credit for that idea. We're just voicing everyone's ideas into the room.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
it sidesteps that kind of uncomfortable pointing out of someone being a bit quiet, which is not a role
yeah,
modeling behavior we want to create.
yeah.
Um,
Exactly. And I think you know, as a facilitator, you come up with your own phrases and your own kind of way of encouraging participation that doesn't go, oh, you've been quiet, Juliet. Come on, then. Let's
yes.
hear what you've got to say. I bet you've got something excellent to say because you haven't said anything yet. I mean, that sort of stuff
Talk
is
about putting the
just,
pressure on. That's
oh,
yeah.
yeah. And I know that if I'm not the person facilitating, I sit on the more introverted end of the spectrum.
Mm,
So if I'm in a session, I am not the first person to put my hand up and contribute. And I think that can be helpful because I can kind of get into the shoes of the people that would rather
yeah.
not be the first people to speak and think about how would I feel if I was here and what could the facilitator do to make it safe for me?
And of course, the point of hearing all those voices, partly it's inclusion, especially if you're working with a team who's going to be going off and doing other things later. We want to make sure that we've got that feeling of everyone working together and everyone's voice is important. And if we're solving complex problems or high stakes problems, we absolutely want all those voices because
Yeah.
that's one of the kind of the benefits of having a really good facilitation, really great facilitation, is that it gets to whatever the outcome
Yes.
is, which will often be more than just I like my teammates more. It's often some kind of problem or solution or something that we're focusing our attention on.
Yes. And creating that safe environment, whether that's through you leading by example or you asking the design of the day so that people can start to speak a little bit and step it up over the course of the day, or doing some exercises that help to build trust, and in a kind of safe way, you know, as a facilitator you can show your vulnerability to encourage other people
Mm.
to do the same. um all of those things build to having an environment where it's okay to disagree and have different opinions and to have that conversation. If everyone agrees and has the same view, then you've got a kind of group think or bias going on, which is a bit of a red flag, really. If
Mm.
everyone agrees, there's something that has gone. It's not safe enough for somebody to disagree or say something different. And again,
Or
like it's
everyone's bought into the same worldview, so no one can even see that there's something else, which is where the
yes,
external facilitator can say, actually, who can give me 3 points of, a contrary point of view, or what would the
yeah,
opposite point of view be, or
exactly.
to play with that kind of alternative world that
Yeah.
people are maybe aren't even seeing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, when everyone agrees, and again, as a leader, you want people to be able to have different perspectives and different points of view and be confident enough to be able to
Mm.
voice them, regardless of what the end solution is. But it's a bit of a
Yeah.
boring workshop if everyone agrees, and then you've all gone home in half an hour. Doesn't do the
Exactly.
job.
So there's a happy medium as well, I find, between knowing that you've got different viewpoints in the room, especially if
Yeah.
there's solutions. I think it's more important if there's competing solutions, and making sure that people understand that just because they proposed something and even then argued for it, for the preceding half a day,
Mm,
they can, with complete graciousness and strength, step away from that idea and say, actually, yeah, I can now see that's not going to work. Or
yeah.
actually, I think we need a substantial rethink if this is going to be going ahead. So it gives people permission to both have a point of view and present it in a constructive way,
Yeah.
and it gives them permission that there is strength in walking away from your own idea.
Yes. And in a beautiful world of Venn diagrams that you know that I operate in, is when you can combine ideas and
Yeah,
you can build on each other's ideas to come up with something that is perhaps different or that they wouldn't have thought about on their own. That's when you're really kind of firing on all cylinders, I think, and have
yeah.
great collaboration where it's not an and or you could try out both of those solutions, or there could be a combination that could have the potential to work even
Mm,
better. And I
yeah,
love it on the occasions where that does happen.
yeah. And it's asking the right questions, isn't it? Or finding different questions that you can ask that create the opportunity for people to see that
Yeah,
that's possible.
yeah, exactly that.
Yeah. The other one that I've found really interesting and I'll be honest, challenging in the moment when
Hmm.
facilitating a room, and this is me as an external facilitator in this example, is when on a couple of occasions there've been really heartfelt differences in the
Yeah,
room. And even though there's a particular outcome, I've been briefed that actually, if you can just get us past this one obstacle where we've got really deeply held points of view, and no one can be right or wrong, it's just a very deeply held point of view about what we should be doing next. If we can just get over that obstacle, we will have achieved what we want to in the day. But clearly, I can't necessarily say that out loud. But
yeah,
it's really interesting to unpack what are the assumptions about the world that would have to be true
yeah,
for each of these points of view to be a really compelling story that we tell, a really compelling point of view. It's helping people to backtrack a little bit from, I think this or I believe this, to, okay, so the following three things would need to be true
yeah,
for this to be, a really valid
yeah,
point of view. And then what you start to realize is that you're not then doing a competition of my assumption is better than your assumption. What you're actually doing is actually none of these assumptions are quite true.
yeah,
And normally what comes is a
yeah.
middle way. So
And
again, it's about asking those
asking the
questions in a slightly different
asking the
way.
questions, and also sometimes, not always, it's about giving the opportunity for people to be heard. And
Yes.
often somebody may have their point of view and that can be a discussion, and they can say, okay, I'm fine with us not pursuing this like project or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
but they just want the opportunity to be truly listened to, and that can sometimes be enough.
Yeah. Comes back to that listening
Yeah,
point as well from earlier.
yeah,
So, what else have we not touched on, which is a key element of really great facilitation? You and I have said a couple of times before, actually, that really great facilitation, people kind of often don't notice it, but
yeah.
when it's absent, oh my goodness, you definitely notice its absence. Is there anything else that really needs to be there for really great facilitation to
Think
occur?
again, if I'm thinking about coming into an organization as an external person, I think things that are really important is running on time, sort of doing what you say that you're going to do, and setting some kind of
Yeah.
like rules of engagement at the start, like for without coming across as sounding patronizing, like somebody's going, and we're all going to respect each other, and it's like, no,
Yeah.
that sounds awful. Um, but there's something about, how are we all going to interact today? And the things for me are like, if we're here, we're giving 100%. Um, the more we put in, the more we get back. Listening,
Yeah.
listening to each other, and keeping an open mind. I think that some of those kind of ground rules can be really helpful in terms of how
Mhm.
people interact with each other. What else, Juliet?
I
I don't know.
think that's a really good
Yeah.
list. And sometimes I co-create those at the beginning of a session. So I put up my side. I co-create. These are the kind of the
Yeah.
ground rules we're using today. What do you think? Put them up on the flip chart, and then I go to my side of this is what I think. And these are kind of it's my way of saying these are kind of non-negotiable, but at the same time,
Yes.
I've given you the chance to also contribute your non-negotiables to
Yeah.
the table. So that's quite a nice way to
Yes.
control the room whilst also doing it in a way that feels co-creating with
Yes.
those
Yeah,
there.
absolutely.
Um, the one other thing I was going to mention was the clarity of the outcome beforehand. So some of the conversations that we've had today are around the fluidity that's needed. And then also in our previous episode, we were talking about kind of complexity and navigating complexity. And you don't always know when you're navigating these complex human relationships and dynamics, you don't always know where you're going to get to.
Mm,
And yet, having a clear outcome is really important at
yeah,
the beginning. We want to have made a decision on X, for
yeah,
example. We don't predetermine what that decision is, but we need that decision to make the next
yeah,
month's worth of work actually make sense.
yeah.
Well, how do you balance creating a clear outcome with having the fluidity that's needed
Yeah, that's
in the
such a good
session?
question because there can be real tension there. And I think
Mm,
all of us can have I always think I can get through more than is actually possible with giving people the time and space to
I'm glad that's not just
speak.
me. Yes, that's
No,
been my
no,
experience too.
yeah. And I always have too full an agenda and I always know what I'm going to take, which things I
Yeah.
can, which things I can take out. So I think there's a pragmatism around I always ask, what does success look like? And help my client to be as granular as possible in that.
Mm,
And if it doesn't feel achievable, then I will say, they'll be like, we want to have three clear outcomes and know then and have a project plan for each. And it might be, well, I think we can be really clear on the three directions that we're going in, but we're not going to have time to work up project
mm,
plans as part of the session. So, I can help after the event to keep that moving, but there's a balance between how much time and space do people need in order to be able to uh, have their voice heard and come to a conclusion that where there's some level of consensus in the room. And so there's a bit of sometimes pushing back about what I think is genuinely possible, um, and helping the client to understand that the process of having enough time and space for people to talk about it, but it's not just a talking shop, not too much time. That balance is a bit of an art and a science, and to trust me that I am on their side. I'm working with them in order to get the outcomes that they want. And people are complex. And with
mm.
all the skills and experience that I have, I can do my very best to get to where we said that we're going to get to. But sometimes facilitation gets talked about in terms of herding cats. And sometimes if there's something that we don't know about that takes the conversation to a different place, they might need that time and space to be able to talk through that as a group.
Yeah.
So there's always a conclusion and next steps, and I make sure that there's always time for that. But sometimes it is really difficult to get to that place if there's things that are going on for people that need to be unlocked before we can get to the end point.
Yeah. That's actually quite reassuring for me. So I think that as a default assumption, unless you are a very experienced facilitator, you are likely to have anticipated covering more ground than you actually will be able to in
Yeah,
your session that you're thinking about or
yeah,
your kind of regular meeting. You are likely to need more time for discussion, assuming that there's some kind of, you know, cultural consensus like process you'll want to go through rather than it being very cut and dry as to what the decision is. And I think generally speaking, you're better off having an objective which is easily met, with good facilitation, and then maybe there's a stretch objective of it. And if we have time, it would be great to have talked about this as
yes,
well.
yeah,
But to be really clear on the one priority
yeah.
that we're talking about and we're exploring in that session. So yeah, as a general rule, unless you're a master facilitator like Lucy, cut down your agenda.
No,
It would be my advice because you'll always find things take longer than
it's
you
my
expect.
Juliet, it's my advice too, and thank you
Yeah.
for the compliment. But I think the thing that is for all of us facilitating, whether that's in a
Mm,
leadership role or as an independent facilitator of people groups, that we always try and do more than is
yeah.
humanly possible. Humans are complex and we're herding cats for a few hours, and
Hmm.
therefore a specific outcome can't be guaranteed. And as a facilitator, your job is about making something possible or easier. You're not a consultant. You're not coming in saying this is the solution
Yeah.
X, Y, and Z. You're facilitating the conversation so they can do it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
with the best will in the world, there's too many variables to give 100% guarantee that we're going to
Yeah.
get to exactly this outcome.
Yeah. Yeah. So really briefly before we wrap up, I'd love to hear, so you mentioned earlier on some specific scenarios or kind of circumstances where you find it really helpful or you see teams really benefit from that external facilitation. I think you mentioned hybrid as being one of them, and there might be another few circumstances in which you have experienced teams making so much more progress because of expert
Yeah,
external facilitation compared to maybe a leader stepping up themselves.
yeah.
What are those situations where you see the biggest benefits
I
to an
think
external coming in?
I think that when you have a team that is hybrid or is fully remote and you're not all in the office every day, 5 days a week, get deliberately getting people together every quarter, 6 months, months, whatever that looks like, becomes even more important because
Mm.
everything works on relationships and you have to give enough time and space for people to get to know, like, hopefully, and trust each other. So getting people together deliberately when they're working remotely or hybrid oils the wheels for absolutely everything else to happen, in my opinion.
Mm.
And it might be that you've got projects that are running that are complex and you've got different stakeholders. Getting that project team together at the very beginning um, oils the wheels for that project running smoothly. And I think it is sometimes team days or getting people together is seen as a nice to have. I don't believe that it's a nice to have. I believe that it's essential for getting your teams working. Your team might be working well, but if you want your team to be high performance, that almost, I see it like as a Maslow hierarchy of needs. Building those relationships is the foundation for everything. And that happens quicker and better when people are in a room together and facilitated well.
Yeah, fantastic. I can't disagree with anything you've said there.
Oh,
Fantastic. I love it.
Juliet, come on.
So
Have we got groupthink going on between us?
no, well, I don't think so. The
I know
situations
that
where I see it work
you
are
do
very
a lot of
similar.
facilitation too, and I know that we talk about
Yeah,
this. We talk about this a lot. So it's um there's some things here that we've definitely talked about offline as
yeah,
we've kind of coached each other through some of the different things that we've been talking about.
yeah, yeah. And I think the one final thing I would say is the to re-emphasize Lucy's point here about the you are as a facilitator you're guiding, but you have to trust the facilitator. You're kind of bringing them in because you trust them to be able to guide you in the way that
Yeah,
is best going to get you to your goals. And so if you're going to bring in an external facilitator, then making sure that you trust them to do what needs to happen on the day. And that
mm,
is, it's very empowering because the leader can then sit around the table as a normal participant and doesn't need to be the one who's actually holding the emotion and the information and all of that kind of load that you
yeah,
have as you're holding the room for the half day or the day. And it's a really important kind of trust relationship
yeah.
there.
And
Yeah.
you might need to work on that with whoever's facilitating your session so that you do have that. You do have that
Yeah.
trust. And that's
Yeah.
mutual. That's a mutual trust. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Definitely. So what are the key takeaways that you'd like people to think about?
I think as a leader, I'd like, if you're listening to this, to think about what does facilitation look like for you and your style of leadership. I think that um, if you run a hybrid or remote team or organization, it's thinking about how are you getting your people together and how are you really getting the best from that time that they're spending together. And I think if you need any help as a leader with your facilitation skills, or you'd like someone to come in and work with your team, then get in touch with me, Lucy at lucidity.org.uk.
That was going to be my next question. Excellent. Thank you very much, Lucy. All of Lucy's contact details are in the episode notes as well. And I have to say, we don't talk about this much, but both of us, but Lucy in this case, has a really good newsletter that's going out with emails a couple of times a week, once a week, twice a week, roughly
Yeah,
that,
roughly.
which is Yeah, a lot of the topics that we talk about are included in that, including kind of this work that she's doing around facilitation. So do get on that email list as well if you're interested in this area of work. Right then, we're going to wrap up today. So thank you for spending this time with us. I'm Juliet Corbett, an executive coach and strategist working one-to-one with senior leaders.
And I'm Lucy Gower, a facilitator, trainer and coach, and I help leaders develop their high-performing teams. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share with colleagues and help leverage the impact of the quiet leadership revolution.